Chapter 1. The First Frost. The morning is calm, almost too calm. You step outside your modest, thatched roof cottage, and a strange chill prickles your skin. The sky is a pale, empty gray, with not a single bird singing. The air tastes sharp. Biting at your cheeks and nose as you walk down the narrow dirt path of your village, your boots crunch over a thin, shimmering layer of frost. It's early for such cold too early. You've seen autumn's chill before, but this feels different. You glance at the fields beyond the village, where the grass sparkles like crushed glass, each blade frozen and stiff. Some of the older villagers wave to you, their breath puffing out in thick white clouds. You hear them muttering about the early. Cold, dismissing it as a fluke, just a strange autumn morning. They have lived through countless winters. What harm could a little early frost bring? But as you reach the village well, you notice the thin layer of ice clinging to the bucket surface. And when you dip your hand into the water, it's like plunging it into a freezing river. Your fingers sting, and you pull them back, rubbing them to warm them up. You turn and look around. The village looks normal enough, but something about the air feels different. The trees stand like silent ghosts, their leaves frozen and brittle. The chickens peck at the ground, but they look confused, their beaks scratching at the frosty soil. A faint unease settles in your stomach. This isn't just a cold morning. This is something more. Something you can't quite name. Too. The cold's relentless grip days pass, and the frost refuses to leave. Every morning, the village awakens to a shimmering blanket of ice covering everything. The roofs of cottages glitter like silver, but there is nothing magical about it. The cold is everywhere. Simple tasks become a struggle. The well is now a block of ice, the water inside frozen solid. The villagers take turns hacking at the surface with iron tools just to get a bucket of water. The young children, who once played outside, are now bundled up in rags, shivering even by the fireside. Inside your home, the cold is a constant companion. The wind finds its way through every crack, slipping in like a ghost. Your small hearth struggles to keep the room warm, and the smoke hangs thick in the air because the chimney is partly clogged with ice. Cooking is a challenge. The bread dough freezes before it can rise. The milk from your neighbor's cow turns to icy slush in the bucket. You wrap yourself in every scrap of cloth you own, but the cold gnaws at you, a sharp, unending at night. The wind howls outside like a wild beast. You huddle under layers of blankets, but sleep is thin and restless. Even in the darkness, you feel the chill creeping closer, slipping beneath your covers, freezing the air you breathe. The older villagers whisper that they've never seen anything like this. Even in the deepest winter, it was never so cold, never. So early. But what can you do? This is nature's wrath, and you are just a peasant helpless beneath its icy fist. 3. The fields turn to ice when you step outside one morning. A thick, pale mist hangs over the village, freezing and motionless. You make your way to the fields, hoping that the frost has spared the crops. But your hopes are shattered. The fields are a graveyard of ice. Stalks of wheat stand frozen, their heads bowed, trapped in crystal shells. The barley has turned to brittle silver husks. Even the root vegetables, the carrots, the turnips, the beets have turned to icy rocks beneath the soil. You try to pull one out, but it snaps in half, frozen solid. The livestock suffer too. Cows stand huddled together, their breath steaming, their rough fur rimmed with frost. Chickens barely move, their feet frozen to the ground. Your neighbor's sheep, usually so hardy, shiver under their thick wool, eyes wide with fear. In the village square, you see other villagers, their faces pale and anxious. The chatter is gone now, it's only hushed murmurs. People count their food supplies, which were meant to last until the harvest. But what harvest? The fields are dead, and winter has come early. The village elder, a wrinkled, bent man with a thin white beard, tries to speak calmly, but his voice trembles. He talks of waiting for the sun to return, of being patient. But you see the fear in his eyes. He has never seen a frost like this, so cold, so sudden, and in your heart, you know that waiting may not be enough for a meeting of despair. The village elders call a meeting in the small, smoke-filled hall at the village center. You squeeze in with the rest of the villagers, packed together like freezing cattle. The fire in the center crackles weakly, but it barely pushes back the cold. The elder raises his hands, trying to speak above the murmurs. His voice shakes slightly, but he does his best to appear calm. We must share what we have, he says. Those with extra food must help those without. We will make it through the winter if we work together. But his words spark an argument. Share, a burly farmer shouts. I barely have enough for my own family. Why should I give it away? Another woman, her face pale and gaunt, cries out, what about the sick? How will they survive? The room erupts in chaos. Angry voices, fearful faces, hands waving in frustration. You see neighbors you've known for years, people who once shared smiles and laughter now turning on each other. The cold has done more than freeze the fields. It has frozen their hearts. You stand near the back, watching, feeling a growing sense of dread. If the frost doesn't kill you, this fear and mistrust just might, and as the meeting ends without any real solution, you step outside into the bitter wind once more. Overhead, the sky is a dull, iron gray, and the wind carries a whisper of even colder days to come. Chapter 2, Starvation's Shadow. You wake up, and the cold is still there, sharp and cruel, pressing against your skin. But now another enemy has joined the frost. Hunger. Your stomach growls, a painful, empty ache that refuses to leave. You look at the bread on the table. It's not much, just a small, dark loaf, hard as a rock. You try to break off a piece, but it crumbles, dry and lifeless. Your teeth ache as you try to chew it. The taste is bitter, almost like eating dried mud. Outside, you see other villagers, each with the same pale, tired look. Some are gnawing on old bread like you, their faces tight with misery. The children are quiet, too weak to run or play. The village square is empty of laughter, replaced by the faint rustle of wind and the slow crunch of icy dirt underfoot. The grain stores were supposed to last until spring, but the frost came early, and now the grain is going bad. You hear whispers of mold spreading through the sacks, a green and white rot that creeps over everything it touches. Boil it. Scrape it off. It's still food, someone mutters. But you've tried that, haven't you? The mold leaves a foul taste, a sickly, bitter flavor that twists your stomach. You look at your family, their thin faces, their empty eyes. You wish you could promise them a warm meal, fresh bread, sweet apples. But all you have is this stone-hard bread, and the bitter taste of fear, and in the back of your mind, a cold thought takes root. This is just the beginning, too. The foragers. Gamble desperation pushes people to do foolish things. It starts with whispers of few brave souls speaking in hushed tones near the frozen well. The forest. There might be something there. Berries. Rabbits, maybe. You're not sure who started it, but soon enough, a small group of villagers decides to venture out. They wrap themselves in ragged cloaks, their faces wrapped in scarves to shield against the biting wind. You see their eyes a mix of fear and determination. Be careful. You whisper to one of them, a young man you've known since childhood. He gives you a weak smile, but there's no real hope in his eyes. Just hunger. You watch them vanish into the misty, frozen woods. The trees loom like silent guardians, their branches heavy with ice. Hours pass, and the cold deepens. You wait. Staring at the forest's edge, your heart pounding. Some return with empty hands, faces pale and shivering. Nothing. Just snow. The birds are gone. The animals, too, they say, their voices hollow, but one man, a thin, desperate hunter, holds up a small bundle of twisted, withered berries. You see the others rush toward him, eyes wide with hunger. He pulls the berries closer, a wild look in his eyes. These are mine. He snaps, his voice cracking. Arguments break out. People push and shout. And you realize something terrible. Hunger is turning your neighbors into strangers. Later, as darkness falls, you hear that the young man who smiled at you did not return. Some say he got lost. Others whisper that the wolves took him, and you wonder, would you have gone into the woods? Would you have risked everything for a handful of berries? 3. The bitter broth dinner is no longer a meal, it's a desperate ritual. You sit by the weak, sputtering fire, a small iron pot hanging above the flames. Inside, a thin gray broth simmers, bubbling weakly. But this is not a soup you would ever want to eat. A tea is made from scraps the last bits have dried. Herbs, a few thin roots you dug from the frozen ground, and a scrap of leather you boiled until it softened. You remember where the leather came from, an old shoe, once worn by your father. The broth smells faintly of dirt, with a sharp, bitter taste that stings your tongue. But you force yourself to sip it, feeling the warm liquid slide down your throat, filling the empty ache in your belly. It's disgusting, but it's food around you. Your family does the same. Your mother stirs her bowl with a weak, shaking hand. Your younger sibling looks at you with wide, empty eyes, sipping the broth without a word. Outside, the wind howls. The cold presses against the walls of your cottage, and you hear it groan in protest. You remember stories of grand feasts, tables covered in roasted meats, fresh bread, and ripe fruits. You remember laughing with friends around a warm hearth. But those are just memories now warm, distant dreams swallowed by the frost. Tonight, you will sleep with a full stomach, but only because you are willing to eat what no one else would, and in the darkness, you wonder how long before the broth runs out. 4. The price of survival hunger is no longer just a feeling, it is a shadow that stalks the village. You see it in the hollow eyes of your neighbors, the sharp bones pressing against their thin, pale skin. People avoid each other now, clutching their meager food supplies like treasures. One morning, you hear a scream. You rush outside to see a woman crying, clutching an empty basket. They took it. My bread, my flour, thieves. She cries, her voice breaking, but who could have taken it? Everyone is hungry. Everyone is desperate. Suspicion spreads like wildfire. You see neighbors eyeing each other with fear, hands gripping knives or iron rods. Once friendly faces now look cold and guarded. Keep your door locked, your mother whispers to you, her voice tense. Don't trust anyone. At night, you hear whispers, rumors of stolen food, of people sneaking into cottages like shadows, grabbing anything they can find. You hear about a farmer who tried to guard his grain but was beaten and left bleeding in the snow. Even you are not safe. One evening, you wake to the sound of your door creaking. You leap up, heart pounding, and see a dark figure slipping out into the cold. The small piece of bread you had saved is gone. Your father's face is pale with rage. Thieves. Animals. They will turn on each other soon. But when you look into the faces of your neighbors, thin, pale, desperate, you realize something terrible. They are not animals. They are people. People just like you. And then you ask yourself, what would you do to survive? Would you steal? Would you fight? Would you turn against those you once called friends? As the frost thickens, the hunger grows, and you are forced to wonder, is the cold worse than the darkness growing inside the village itself? Chapter 3. The wolves descend. The wind howls louder tonight. It claws at the walls of your cottage, slipping through every crack, a cold, invisible hand reaching for you. But tonight, the wind carries something else, a sound that makes your heart race, a howl. It's a long, mournful cry, rising and falling, carried on the icy breeze. You shiver, pulling your thin blanket tighter. Outside, the village is wrapped in darkness, the snow glittering like crushed silver under the pale moonlight. Then another howl, and another. This time closer. Wolves. You've heard stories of them, gray shadows in the forest, sharp teeth, hungry eyes. But they never come near the village. Not until now. You stand by the small window, peeking through the frosty glass. Beyond the narrow street, you can see the dark, twisted shapes of the trees at the village edge. Shadows seem to dance between them, moving, shifting. Are they just the wind, or something else? In the distance, you hear them again, a chorus of howls, echoing across the frozen fields. You remember your father's stories, tales of harsh winters when wolves would descend on villages, desperate for food, driven mad by hunger. A chill runs down your spine. Your family sleeps fitfully beside the dying fire, unaware of the danger creeping closer. You want to wake them, to warn them. But you don't want to cause panic, and then, just as suddenly as they came, the howls stop. Silence falls over the village. But you know they are still out there, hiding in the shadows, watching. How long until hunger drives them into the village itself? 2. The night of terror morning arrives with a dull, gray sky, heavy with snow. You step outside, wrapping yourself in a thin, ragged cloak, and hear worried voices in the village square. Lena is missing. Someone shouts, panic in their voice. Lena, a child, barely 8 years old. You see her mother, pale and frantic, her hair wild, her eyes wide with fear. She was just outside, just for a moment. And now she's gone. A cold knot forms in your stomach. The wolves. Could they have taken her? The villagers gather, voices overlapping, fear turning to chaos. We must search the woods. No, it's too dangerous. We can't leave her. But someone is already running toward the forest, a thick stick in hand, face pale but determined. More follow, clutching whatever they can find rusty. Knives, wooden poles, a pitchfork. Even you grab a broken branch, the fear pushing you forward. The forest is a maze of twisted, snow-laden trees, their branches heavy with ice. Your breath puffs out in thick, misty clouds as you trudge through the snow, eyes scanning the shadows. Lena, someone calls, their voice sharp and desperate. Lena, but there is only silence. And the deeper you go, the darker it seems. The trees close in, and the wind whispers through the branches, a cold, hollow sound. Suddenly, you hear it, a faint, whimpering cry. Your heart leaps, and you rush forward, pushing through the snow. And there, beneath a low, twisted tree, you see her, Lena, huddled in the snow, her face pale. Her thin clothes covered in frost, but there is something else just beyond the tree line. Dark shapes move. Wolves. Thin, gray shapes, their glowing eyes watching, their breath steaming in the cold air. Run. Someone shouts. You grab Lena, pulling her to her feet, and together you stumble back toward the village. Behind you, the howls rise again. A hungry, desperate chorus. You don't look back. You can't. 3. Defending the hearth that night. The village is a fortress. Doors are bolted, windows covered with thick rags. Fires are stoked high, the flickering light casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. You and your family huddled by the fire, listening. Listening for the sound you fear the most, a scratch, a low growl, a sharp, hungry whimper. Your father stands by the door, an old hunting spear clutched in his shaking hands. Stay close, he whispers. If they come, we'll fight. The room is cold despite the fire. You feel your heart pounding, every tiny sound making you flinch. A gust of wind howls down the chimney, sending sparks dancing across the hearth. Your mother clutches your younger sibling, whispering a quiet prayer. Suddenly, a scream cuts through the darkness. You rush to the window, pulling back a corner of the cloth. Outside, you see a shape moving, a figure running, stumbling through the snow. And behind it, dark, sleek shapes dart forward. Wolves. The figure falls, and the wolves are upon them. But then a shout. Villagers rush forward, torches blazing, waving sticks and shouting. The wolves scatter, slipping back into the darkness. You turn away, your heart pounding, your hands trembling. It could have been you. It could have been any of you, and you realize the cold is not your only enemy. There are teeth in the darkness. 4. The wolf's grim gift morning breaks, pale and weak, the sky a dull iron gray. You step outside, your breath misting in the freezing air. The village is quiet, too quiet. No laughter, no chatter. Only whispers. Fearful and tense, and then you see it dot a T the edge of the village. Near the frozen forest, something dark lies in the snow. You move closer, your feet crunching over the icy ground. Others gather around you, faces pale, eyes wide with fear. It's a carcass of deer, or what's left of one. Torn, bloody, its fur matted with ice. But this is not a meal, it's a warning. The wolves brought it here, left it on the village's doorstep. Some whisper that it's an offering, a sign of desperation. Others say it's a message reminder that the wolves are watching. You shiver, staring at the blood-stained snow, the dark, twisted forest beyond. The wolves are still out there, hungry, watching, and you can't help but wonder how long before they come again. How long? Before they try to tear down your doors? Would you fight them? Would you hide? Or would you become just another shadow lost in the snow? Chapter 4. Fire and Frost. The cold has many enemies, but in your village, one enemy is more dangerous than most the forest. What was once a place of hunting and foraging has become a frozen graveyard. Wood is life. It is the warmth of the hearth, the glow of the fire, the crackling light that keeps the darkness at bay. All of it depends on wood. But now the trees are wrapped in icy armor, their trunks hard as iron, their branches brittle and sharp. Cutting them down is a struggle, and the risk is clear, yet without wood there is no warmth. So the villagers, the young, the old, anyone strong enough venture into the forest with axes and saws. You join them, your breath a misty cloud, your fingers numb even before you begin. Swing, chop, swing. The axe bites into the tree, sending icy splinters flying. But each strike is a struggle. The wood is stubborn, frozen through, and every swing of the axe sends a sharp jolt through your aching arms. But it's not just the cold you fear. It's the shadows. Stories swirl around the village like snowflakes. Whispered rumors of villagers who went into the woods and never returned. Eric, the hunter, his thick fur cloak left tangled on a branch. Old Greta, her twisted walking stick found buried in the snow. Wolves, someone whispers. Or the cold itself. But the forest doesn't care for rumors. It waits, silent and dark, a wall of twisted branches that seem to close around you. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of snow makes your heart pound. Is that just the wind? Or something else? The sky above is gray, the pale sun a distant, frozen disk. And still you chop, each swing of the axe a painful, desperate struggle. Because without wood, there is nothing but the cold. But as you haul your bundle of wood back toward the village, your eyes scan the trees. Dark shapes seem to dance between them, shadows that disappear when you look directly at them. You quicken. Your pace, each breath a misty gasp. Would you dare return tomorrow? Would you venture into the forest again, knowing that some never come back? 2. Hearths that faintly glow back in the village. The forest shadow follows you. The wood you carried is damp, half frozen, more ice than kindling. But it must do. Your family gathers around the hearth, a weak, sputtering fire struggling to stay alive. Your father kneels by the hearth, blowing gently, trying to coax the flames higher. Your mother stands close, her thin shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. Your younger sibling sits on the floor, hands stretched out, their pale fingers trembling, but the fire is no longer a warm, crackling glow. It is a fading, desperate whisper. The damp wood hisses and steams, sending up weak tendrils of smoke that cling to the ceiling. The orange glow barely reaches the walls, leaving the room wrapped in shadow. Your mother's voice is a whisper. Don't let it die. Please. Don't let it die. You break off another piece of wood, feeding it to the flames, but it catches weakly, a pale flicker. Outside, the wind howls, clawing at the walls, slipping through every crack, an icy ghost that refuses to leave. Other families are not so lucky. You hear whispers of neighbors whose fires have gone out. In the darkness, they sit, wrapped in rags, their breath misting in the cold air. Some tear apart old furniture for kindling a broken chair, a wooden shelf. Anything that can burn, one. Family breaks down their own door, using it as firewood. Another tears away part of the roof, feeding the frozen thatch to the flames. You watch them, huddled close, eyes wide and desperate, but how long can this last? How long before the wood runs out? And when it does, what will you burn next? 3. A desperate blazit starts with a shout. Fire! Fire! The cry echoes through. The village, sharp and panicked, you rush outside, your breath a cloud of mist, the freezing air biting at your face. And then you see it, a thick gray column of smoke rising from the village square. Flames leap into the sky, red and orange. A bright, fierce light against the dull gray clouds, the storehouse. The one place where the village kept its meager supplies, some firewood, a few sacks of grain, old tools. It is an inferno, the dry wood blazing, the heat so fierce you feel it even from a distance. Villagers run in all directions, some shouting, others staring in horror. A few grab buckets of snow, hurling it at the flames, but it's hopeless. The fire is too strong. You see a man, pale and frantic, rushing toward the flames. My grain, my food. He screams, but someone pulls him. Back, stay back. You'll burn. A woman shouts, but it's not just about the food. It's the warmth. The blaze is the warmest thing the village has seen in weeks. People stand around it, shivering, their pale faces glowing in the fiery light. Some even reach out their hands, desperate for the heat, and then you realize the terrible truth. Someone did this. Someone set the storehouse on fire, a reckless, desperate attempt to feel warmth. Even for just a moment, the fire roars, its heat licking the sky. It is beautiful and terrible, a dragon's breath in the heart of winter. But as it burns, so, too, does your hope. The precious wood, the food, the last scraps of life, all reduced to ash, and when the flames finally die, the village is colder than ever. 4. The cold that kill smoke hangs in the air, a gray mist that clings to the village. But as it fades, the cold rushes in, fierce and merciless. The wind howls louder, the air sharper, slipping through the cracks in the walls, pressing against your skin like icy fingers. Your hearth is a faint, sputtering glow, the last scraps of wood hissing and steaming. Your family huddles close, their breath misting in the freezing air. Your mother's lips are pale, her hands trembling. Your younger sibling shivers, their small body wrapped in a thin, ragged blanket. Outside, the village is silent. No one dares leave their homes. You hear a faint knocking sound, a shutter slamming against a wall in the wind. The trees creak like old bones, their frozen branches swaying, and then you hear a sound, a weak, distant cry. You rush to the window, peeking through the frosty glass. A figure stumbles through the snow, falling to their knees. It's the old man who lived alone at the edge of the village. You see him struggle, his thin cloak fluttering, his hands clawing at the air. He collapses, his face pale, his eyes staring empty. You look away, your heart pounding, your hands shaking. The cold has become a killer, a silent, invisible enemy that creeps into every home, every heart. Your mother's voice is weak. Don't let the fire die. Don't let it die, but even as you feed the last of the wood into the flames, you know it won't be enough. The cold is everywhere, a silent shadow pressing in, and you wonder how much longer can you fight it. How many more will be lost to the frost? Would you be next? Chapter 5. The Plague of Hunger. The hunger is no longer just an ache in your stomach. It is a poison. A slow, creeping sickness that drains your strength with each passing day. You wake up feeling weak, your arms heavy, your legs trembling. As you stand, even the smallest tasks leave you breathless, but it's not just you. The village is filled with the same pale, hollow-eyed faces. Neighbors you once knew as strong and lively now shuffle through the streets like shadows, their thin bodies wrapped in layers of ragged cloth. Some have developed a dry, hacking cough. Others shiver even by the fire, their faces flushed with fever, starvation fever, the elder whispers, his voice weak. When the body grows too weak, it cannot fight the cold or the sickness. Every breath seems to burn in your chest. At night, you hear the quiet murmurs of your family, your mother's voice, a faint, worried whisper. Your younger sibling lies beside you, their forehead hot, their breath rapid. I'm so cold. They mumble even as sweat beads on their brow. Outside, the village is silent. No more laughter. No more songs. Only the soft, mournful wail of the wind and the thin, weak coughs that echo through the narrow streets. Death becomes a whisper, slipping through the shadows. A woman down the road found cold and still in her bed. An old man, his weak, feverish body too tired to stand. And with each passing day, you feel it creeping closer, how long before it knocks at your door? 2. The healer's bitter brew, but even in the darkest times, hope has a strange way of appearing. An old woman, her face lined with wrinkles, her gray hair tied in a loose knot, appears at the edge of the village. You remember her, Ingrid, the village healer. Her cottage lies just beyond the forest, a small, crooked hut filled with strange herbs and smoky potions. The villagers call her Old Ingrid, or simply the witch, but now they line up at her door, desperate for her help. Her voice is rough, but her hands are steady as she prepares her brew. A little of this, to warm the blood. A pinch of that, to clear the lungs. Dried leaves, twisted roots, and dark powders swirl together in her iron pot, sending up a thick, bitter steam. You stand in the line, shivering in the cold, watching, as she ladles out a dark, steaming liquid into wooden cups. One by one, the villagers drink, some grimacing at the taste, others clutching their throats as the thick, bitter brew slides down. When your turn comes, you step forward, staring at the thick, dark liquid in your cup. Drink it quick, Ingrid says, her sharp eyes watching you. It may taste like poison, but it will fight the fever. You take a deep breath and gulp it down. It burns, a thick, bitter fire that slides down your throat, leaving a sour taste in your mouth. Your stomach twists, and for a moment, you feel dizzy, but then you see something strange. A young man, pale and weak, drinks the brew and sits down beside the fire. His head droops, his eyes flutter shut, and he does not wake. Dead? Someone? Whispers, panic in their voice. No. Sleeping. A deep, healing sleep, Ingrid insists. But you see the fear in her eyes. Some whisper that the brew is poison. Others say it is magic. But as you stand there, feeling the warmth spread through your veins, you cannot decide, is this a cure or a curse? Would you drink it again? Or would you rather face the fever? 3. Shadows of the Lost Village has become a graveyard. Not the kind with neat rows of crosses, but a quiet frozen place where the dead vanish into the snow. Those who die are buried quickly, their bodies wrapped in thin cloth, lowered into shallow, frozen graves just beyond the village, but the snow falls faster than the earth can be dug. The ground is frozen solid, and the gravidigers struggle, their iron shovels clanging against the icy dirt. Some bodies are laid to rest beneath thick snowdrifts, covered in a white, silent shroud oddity night. The whispers begin. She was just here yesterday, and now she's gone. I saw him, standing in the snow, staring at my window. Some say the dead do not rest easy. Neighbors whisper of pale shapes wandering between the trees, of faces that press against frosty windows, staring with empty eyes. Some even claim to have heard faint, mournful whispers in the darkness. You want to laugh, to dismiss it as fear, but then you hear a faint sound outside your cottage one night, a soft, scraping noise, like fingers scratching against the wall. Your heart races, your breath comes fast. You press yourself against the thin wooden door, listening. Was it just the wind? Or something else? The next morning, you find pale, twisted footprints in the snow, leading from your door to the edge of the forest. Are the dead truly gone? Or do they wander, cold and lost, seeking warmth they can never feel again? 4. Desperate quasi-survival is a cruel master. It pushes people to do things they never thought possible. And in your village, survival has begun to twist even the kindest souls. It starts with whispers. An old man too weak to stand, left alone in his cottage while his family moves to another home. A young woman, her feverish child wrapped in blankets, slipping quietly into the forest, never to return. Burden, they say. There is not enough food, not enough warmth. Your own family is not immune. Your father's face is pale and thin, his eyes sunken, but his voice is sharp. We must think of ourselves now. We cannot save everyone. Your mother nods, though her eyes are wet with silent tears. She looks at your younger sibling, shivering beneath the blanket, their face pale and feverish, but the hunger gnaws at you all. You wake at night to find your father crouched by the hearth, a thin crust of bread in his shaking hands. Your mother turns away when you ask her why your younger sibling is eating less and less, and then you see it a young boy, pale and weak, wandering the village square alone. His family is gone. No one speaks to him. No one offers him warmth. He is a ghost, walking on thin legs, staring with empty eyes, but no one helps him. No one has anything to give. You want to take him home, to share what little you have. But your father's voice echoes in your mind. We cannot save everyone, and you wonder, is this survival? Or is it something darker? How much of your humanity would you lose just to stay alive? Chapter 6. The Whispering Wind, The wind has always been a cruel companion, a cold, invisible force that slips through the cracks in your walls, wraps around your shivering body, and whispers of despair. But tonight, it is different. Tonight, the wind carries a sound, a strange, ghostly wail that rises and falls like a distant cry. It starts as a low moan, barely more than a whisper, but soon it becomes a mournful, piercing howl that seems to echo across the village you stand by. The window staring into the darkness. Beyond the snow-covered fields, the forest looms like a black, twisted shadow. The trees sway, their branches creaking, their frozen leaves rustling like dead fingers. But it is not just the wind. Your family huddles close, their faces pale. Your mother whispers a quiet prayer, her eyes fixed on the flickering hearth. Your younger sibling buries their face in her shoulder, trembling. Your father stands by the door, his thin hands gripping a rusty iron rod. Wolves? You ask, but even you don't believe it. Wolves howl, yes, but this is different. This is not the hungry, desperate cry of a beast. It is something colder. You hear the neighbors to their doors slam shut, their shutters pulled tight. A dog barks once, then falls silent. And still the howling continues, rising and falling, twisting through the night air, like a song of sorrow. Make it stop. Your younger sibling whispers, but you cannot. The wind is everywhere, rapping. Around the village, clawing at the rooftops, slipping through the cracks, and then, just as suddenly as it began, the howling stops. Silence falls, thick and heavy. Only the faint, steady whisper of the wind remains, but even as you try to calm yourself, you cannot shake the feeling that something is watching, something that hides in the darkness, something that whispers. With the wind, would you dare step outside? Would you face the cold to see what's hiding in the night? 2. The mad hermit's warning next morning. The village is a ghost town. Pale faces peek through frosty windows, but no one steps outside. The sky is a dull, heavy gray, thick clouds hanging low, pressing down like a frozen blanket. Then, just as the sun struggles to pierce the clouds, you see a figure staggering down the snow-covered path, an old man, his wild gray hair tangled, his face pale and gaunt, his tattered cloak fluttering like a ragged ghost. It's old Magnus. Someone whispers. The mad hermit, Magnus. The old man who lived alone in the forest, far beyond the village, in a crumbling hut filled with bones and strange charms. Children whispered that he spoke to the trees, that he danced with shadows. But now he stumbles forward, his eyes wide, his hands clawing at the air, endless winter. He screams, his voice cracking. It's coming. It will never end. You cannot hide. You cannot escape. Villagers gather, but they keep their distance, watching with a mix of fear and pity. Magnus falls to his knees, his thin arms shaking, his eyes wild. The wind whispers. It whispers of death, of frost that never fades, of shadows that never sleep. A brave man, the village elder, steps forward, his voice calm. Magnus, you're cold. Come, we will give you warmth. But Magnus recoils, his eyes burning with terror. Warmth? There is no warmth. Only ice. Only darkness. Only the whispering wind. With a final desperate scream, Magnus collapses, his body limp, his eyes staring at the gray sky. The elder bends over him, feeling for a pulse, but his face is pale when he looks up. He's gone, but his words linger a warning, carried on the wind. An endless winter, a darkness that never fades. Would you believe it? Or would you dismiss it as the ravings of a madman? 3. Frozen graves, forgotten names days pass, but the cold only deepens. The village is wrapped in a thick, silent frost. Your family huddles around the weak, sputtering fire, the air heavy with the scent of damp wood and cold, stale breath. But then a discovery shakes the village. A group of foragers' desperate souls who wander the forest in search of anything edible stumble upon something in the snow, a graveyard. You hear the whispers as they return, pale and trembling, their breath misting in the icy air. Bones, so many bones. A crowd gathers, and you join them, pushing through the thin, frightened faces. The foragers lead you to the edge of the forest, to a snow-covered clearing, where strange, twisted mounds rise from the ground. Graves. Shallow, snow-covered graves. Bones poke through the snow-pale, twisted shapes, some shattered, some wrapped in thin, rotting cloth. Skulls with empty eye sockets stare up at the gray sky, but these are not your villagers. No one recognizes them. No one knows their names. They are strangers' lost souls, forgotten by time. Buried in the cold embrace of the forest, the elder speaks, his voice trembling. This is old. A plague? A massacre? We may never know. Some villagers turn away, crossing themselves, muttering prayers. Others stare, pale and silent, but you cannot look away. The snow falls, gently covering the bones, the twisted, empty faces. Who were they? Travelers lost in the snow? A village that vanished without a trace? And will you end up like them, lost, forgotten, buried in the frost? 4. Signs in the scythe at night. As you huddle by the weak fire, something strange appears in the sky. A faint, ghostly light dances above the village, a shimmering curtain of pale green and white, twisting and flowing like smoke. The aurora borealis, the northern lights. You step outside, staring in awe. The sky is alive, waves of color twisting and swirling, glowing against the dark, starless night. It is beautiful, a breathtaking sight that fills the cold air with a strange, ghostly glow, but the villagers whisper. Some stare with wonder, but others turn away, pale with fear. It's a sign, a woman whispers. A warning, a blessing. Another man insists. The gods sending us hope, but you are not sure. The lights are beautiful, yes, but they are cold. Their glow is pale, ghostly, like the light of a distant, frozen star. They dance, twisting and turning, but they bring no warmth. You remember the stories, tales of the northern lights as the spirits of the dead dancing across the sky, or of great, frozen warriors marching to war in the heavens. Some even say, the lights are the souls of lost children, wandering in the night. The wind stirs, a cold, silent breath that wraps around you. And as the colors dance, you feel a strange chill, not just of the air, but of something else, a whisper, a shadow, hope, or doom, salvation or despair. Would you believe that the lights are a blessing, or are they a warning of something even colder yet to come? Chapter 7. Despair and darkness. The days are shorter now. The sun barely peeks over the horizon, casting a pale, sickly light before vanishing again. In your tiny, cold hut, the hearth fire struggles. The once warm glow that filled the room now barely flickers, a weak, trembling light that seems to fight the darkness rather than chase it away. You sit close to the fire, wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own. The wood pile is shrinking fast, each log burning down to ash too quickly. You remember last winter, how the fire blazed so brightly, you could almost feel safe. But this winter is different, colder, darker, and somehow hungrier. Outside, the wind howls like a distant, furious beast. It claws at the walls, finding every tiny crack, every gap, and slipping inside like a thief. The darkness seems to thicken with every passing night, pressing against the tiny, dirty window, as if it wants to creep inside and swallow the warmth. Each night, you sleep fitfully, waking to the creaking of the wooden beams, the wind's endless whispers, and the feeling that the darkness is watching you. You try to tell yourself it's just your imagination, just the winter playing tricks on your mind. But is it? As the light of the fire dims further, you can't help but wonder, will it ever grow bright again? Or is the darkness here to stay? 2. Faces in the frost-stone morning, as the pale, gray light of dawn seeps into your hut, you hear a frantic knocking at your door. You open it to see Helena, the young woman who lives a few houses away. Her eyes are wide with fear, her cheeks red from the cold. I saw them. I saw them in the frost. She gasps, clutching at your arm. Faces, staring at me from the window. At first, you think it must be some trick of the light. Helena has always been nervous, easily frightened. But then she pulls you to her tiny, icy home. Her window is coated in a thick layer of frost, twisted and cracked like a spider's web. But there, in the center of the frozen glass, you see them. Faint, ghostly shapes. A twisted, grinning face here, a hollow, empty-eyed stare there. Faces frozen in terror. It's just the frost, you tell her, though your voice is not as steady as you want it to be. Just patterns made by the cold, but even as you speak, you feel a chill crawl down your spine. The faces seem almost too perfect, too real. As if something or someone is staring back at you, Helena won't go back inside. She refuses, choosing instead to sleep by your fire, though even its weak, flickering light seems like a gift now. And as the days grow colder, you start to wonder, are you imagining things too? Or is there something watching you in the darkness? 3. The poison trusty darkness doesn't just creep in from the forest, it settles inside people's hearts. Food is running low, and each morning, more is missing. Bread vanishes, cured meats disappear, and dried berries once so plentiful are gone. 81st, you tell yourself it must be the rats. But then, old Tomas down the road swears he saw young Jacob sneaking into his storehouse. Jacob denies it, but soon others begin to whisper. Fingers point, voices rise, and the warmth of the village, the sense of being one family, struggling together, begins to crack like ice. Suspicion is a poison, and it spreads fast. One family stops speaking to another. 2 men come to blows. In the street, each accusing the other of theft. Even Helena, who sleeps on your floor now, looks at you nervously whenever you reach for the dwindling pile of bread. You believe me, don't you? She whispers one night, I'd never take more than I need. I'm not like them, But who is like them? Who is telling the truth? Who is stealing? The darkness outside feels safer than the darkness growing between your neighbors and then you. Find your own small store of salted meat, the one you had hidden so carefully scattered on the cold floor, chewed and torn. Was it an animal? Or was it one of them? Or worse, was it someone you trusted? For an unseen enemy village is no longer a place of safety. It's a battlefield of whispered accusations and silent, bitter glares. Some families begin to gather in small groups, locking their doors and speaking only to those they trust, if anyone at all, even the elders, who once settled disputes with calm words, now seem powerless. Their voices are lost beneath the storm of fear and suspicion. They try to hold meetings, but few come. Why stand together when you can't trust your own neighbor? The darkness grows thicker, colder. Helena spends her nights by your weak fire. But even she seems distant now. She watches you with the same fearful look you saw on her face that morning, the morning of the frost. You should be careful, she whispers one night. People, they do strange things when they're hungry, when they're afraid. You want to tell her she's wrong, that the village will pull through this together, but you don't, because you're starting to feel it, to the suspicion, the fear. Every creak of the wood, every shadow seems to hide a threat. One night, you hear a crash outside. You rush to the window and see dark figures moving in the snow. A struggle, a cry, and then silence. You don't open the door. You don't dare. The village is no longer one place. It's a patchwork of desperate people, each one watching the others, each one wondering if they will survive the winter, or if the darkness will swallow them all. Chapter 8. False Hope. The snow begins to melt. Just a little. Just enough for muddy patches to appear beneath the thick, white blanket. You stand by your small, frosted window, staring at the tiny rivers of water running down the glass. The sun, that pale, ghostly sun, seems a little brighter. A thin beam of light breaks through the gray sky, and for the first time in weeks, you feel something you thought you had forgotten, hope. The villagers begin to venture out. Wrapped in thick, patched cloaks, they step carefully onto the slushy ground, their faces lifted toward the dim light. Children, who had been too weak to play, now stomp around in the melting snow, laughing weak, tired laughter, but laughter. Nonetheless, old Tomas, who hasn't been seen in days, shuffles out of his hut, leaning on his crooked cane. His face, wrinkled like an old map, breaks into a toothless smile. The winter is breaking. He croaks. Just a little longer, and we'll see the spring. You want to believe him. You need to believe him. After so many cold, dark nights filled with hunger, with whispered arguments, with the howling wind, this is the light at the end of the tunnel. But then, as quickly as it came, the thaw is gone. The gray clouds return, thicker, darker. The pale sun vanishes, swallowed by the storm. The wind howls again, but this time it's angrier, colder. Snow falls, heavier than before, covering the tiny patches of mud and the hopeful, trampled paths. The brief thaw is over, leaving you with nothing but the bitter cold and the crushing weight of disappointment, too. The last feast desperation can bring people together or tear them apart. In your village, it brings them together one last time. Word spreads a final feast, a desperate attempt to remember better days. The villagers gather in the large, drafty hall at the center of the village, bringing whatever scraps they have left. A few dry loaves, a handful of salted meat, some withered vegetables. The fire in the great hearth burns low, the wood crackling weakly. You sit with Helena by your side, her face pale but smiling. Around you, familiar faces try to force cheerfulness. Children are given tiny portions, their eyes wide with hunger, but their mouths forced into small smiles. Old Thomas stands, raising his shaking hand. "We have survived worse," he declares. His voice is thin, but it carries a hint of pride. "We have seen storms, sickness, famine, and yet we live." A cheer rises, weak but sincere. For a moment, the darkness outside seems far away. Stories are shared stories of old winters, of warm summers, of laughter and dances in the green fields. For a little while, you forget the cold, the hunger, the fear, but the food runs out quickly. The laughter fades, replaced by quiet chewing, by the scraping of bowls for the last crumbs. Helena leans against you, her head on your shoulder, her breathing slow and tired. Will it ever be spring again? She whispers. You don't answer. Because you don't know. 3. A mother's sacrifice. Not all choices are fair. Some are cruel. Some are impossible. You hear the story from Helena. A young mother, Marta, has been struggling to feed her 2 children. Her husband died in the early days of the winter, lost in a snowstorm. Since then, she has fought to keep her children alive, begging for scraps, trading whatever she had. But now, she has nothing left. One morning, Marta is seen walking through the snow, her face pale, her hands shaking. In her arms, she carries a bundle, a small, thin child wrapped in a tattered blanket. She walks to the edge of the village, to the deep, frozen woods. She doesn't return, the villagers whisper. Some say she went to find food. Others say she did what she had to, what no mother should ever have to do. You don't want to believe it. You don't want to think about it. But the whispers are loud, and the fear is real. Helena looks at you with wide, frightened eyes. Could you ever do that? She asks, her voice trembling. Could you leave someone behind? You shake your head, but the truth is, you don't know. In a winter like this, what would you do? What would anyone do? 4. Silence after the storm's wind has stopped. The howling, screaming wind that seemed like an endless monster has finally gone silent. But the silence is not comforting. It is heavy. It is thick. It presses against you, making each breath feel like a struggle. You step outside your hut, your feet crunching on the thick, frozen snow. The village is quiet, too quiet. No children's laughter. No chatter. Just a heavy, terrible stillness. You walk through the village, past the dark, silent huts. In some, you see faces peeking out from cracked windows, pale and fearful. In others, there is nothing, just darkness. Old Thomas' door hangs open, swinging gently in the cold breeze. You call his name, but there is no answer. You step inside, and there he is, sitting by his dead hearth, his cane lying on the ground beside him. His eyes are closed, his face peaceful. You leave quietly. Closing the door behind you, the silence is broken only by muffled cries, a woman's sobbing, a child's whimpering. It is the sound of survival, of a village that has been swallowed. By the winter, each soul locked in their own struggle, Helena takes your hand, her fingers cold, her grip tight. "We will make it," she whispers, but her voice is weak. Her eyes are filled with fear. You nod, forcing a smile. But as you look around at the dark, silent huts, at the endless gray sky, at the thick, frozen snow, you can't help but wonder, will you? Will you make it through this endless winter? Or is the silence just the beginning? Chapter 9. A flicker of life. You wake to a strange sounded drip. It's soft, rhythmic, almost like a whispered promise. At first, you think it's just another cruel dream, but when you open your eyes, you see it. Tiny droplets of water slide down the window pane, tracing thin, wiggling lines in the frost. You step outside, and the air is different. It's still cold, bitter, and sharp, but there's something else. A softness, a gentleness hidden beneath the chill. The sky is still gray, but the sun is there, a faint pale disk trying to fight its way through the clouds, and then you see it a tiny green shoot, poking out of the muddy, half-melted snow. It's nothing, barely more than a blade of grass. But to you, it's everything. Other villagers begin to notice too. Old Tomas' door, the one that hung open for so long, is finally closed. Helena is outside, her pale cheeks gaining a hint of color as she watches the frost melt from the trees. It's the spring, she whispers, her voice filled with awe. It's finally coming, but it's not a sudden transformation. The snow still lingers, and the nights are still cruelly cold. The wind hasn't lost its bite, but there is a promise in the air, a slow, steady change. Tiny green shoots appear along the edges of the paths, and the ice on the river begins to crack, its frozen surface shifting and groaning like an old man. Waking from a long sleep, you find yourself stepping outside more often, feeling the faint warmth on your face, listening to the slow drip-drip of melting snow. And for the first time in a long time, you don't just feel cold, you feel hope. But spring is not a promise. It is a gamble, and in the shadow of the winter that nearly destroyed you, you wonder, will it be enough? 2. Survivors and Shadow Springs. First touch is gentle, but it doesn't heal everything. The village is alive, but it is not whole. The people who survived are changed. Faces are thinner, cheeks hollowed by hunger. Eyes are dark, ringed with shadows that will not fade. Some walk with a limp, their bodies twisted by frostbite. Others speak in whispers, their voices cracked from weeks of crying in the cold darkness. But the worst wounds are not the ones you can see. You hear stories of families torn apart by suspicion, of neighbors who no longer speak. Helena tells you about Marta's empty hut, standing like a ghost at the village's edge. The door swings in the wind, a silent reminder of the choice she made. Old Tomas, who once laughed at the cold, is no longer seen in the square. His door is shut, his fire long dead. You think of his words, his proud speech during the final feast. We have survived worse, but have you? Those who survived gather around the weak fires, sharing stories, but there is a shadow in their laughter, a fear in their eyes. Even as the snow melts, that fear remains, a cold weight in every heart. Helena stays close to you, her fingers often gripping your sleeve, her eyes watching the door as if expecting it to burst open. I dream of the darkness, she whispers. One night, of faces in the frost. Staring at me, you comfort her as best you can, but in your heart you know the truth. Survival is not the same as peace. The village has survived the winter, but it is scarred, and those scars do not fade. 3. The return of the birdsong morning. You hear it a sound so strange, so unfamiliar that you almost don't recognize it. Birdsong.it is faint, a distant melody carried on the cold wind. But it's there. You step outside, and for the first time, you see them tiny birds flitting from branch to branch, their feathers bright against the pale sky. They sing their songs cheerful, fearless like. A celebration of something you can't yet see, children begin to chase them, their laughter mixing with the song. Helena smiles, her pale face brightening for the first time in days. "They're back," she whispers. "They always come back. The birds are not the only ones returning." The forest, so dark and dead during the winter, begins to wake. Tiny buds appear on the trees, a pale green promise of leaves to come. The air smells different, fresher, filled with the scent of damp earth and melting snow. You spend your days outside, feeling the warmth on your skin, listening to the birds. It is as if they are telling you something simple, but powerful. Life goes on, and as you watch them, as you hear their cheerful songs, you start to believe it. You start to remember that the darkness is not forever. That winter is just one chapter, not the end of the story, but for every smile, there is a shadow. Not everyone comes out to watch the birds. Not every hut has a fire, and not every voice joins in the laughter. Survival is not the same as joy. And though the birds sing, you know there are still shadows in the village. 4. Hope in the Ashesthi village begins to rebuild. It is slow. Work, hard work, but it is life. The fields, so long buried beneath the snow, are cleared. The dead, twisted crops are pulled away, their ashes scattered to make way for new seeds. Old tools are repaired, bent blades hammered straight, broken handles replaced. Helena helps you clear the small garden beside your hut. Her hands are still thin, her face pale, but she smiles more now. "We'll plant herbs," she says, her voice bright. "And maybe even a few flowers." The village square is a busy place again. People barter and trade dried meat for a handful of seeds, a warm cloak for a rusty hoe. There is laughter, even arguments, the sounds of life, but the scars are still there. Some huts remain dark, their doors shut forever. Empty chairs gather dust by cold hearths. And when the sun sets, the shadows creep in, a quiet reminder of the darkness that once swallowed the village. One day, you see a group of children chasing a small flock of birds. Their laughter fills the air, light and free. Helena watches them. Her eyes bright, her smile gentle. "We made it," she whispers. "We really did," but even as you smile, even as you feel the warmth of the spring sun, you know that the memories of the winter will not vanish so easily. They are part of you now, part of the village, part of everyone who survived. As the fields turn green, as the trees burst into blossom, you understand something. The darkness never truly leaves, but neither does the light, and for the first time in a long, long while, you feel something real, something strong, hope, but hope is fragile. It must be guarded, nurtured, like the tiny green shoots that push through the soil. Will the village truly recover? Will the shadows fade, or will they always be there, lurking at the edges of your dreams? Only time will tell. Chapter 10. The Tale of the Winter. the fire crackles softly, casting warm, dancing shadows on the walls of the village hall. Outside, the wind is a soft murmur, a gentle whisper compared to the howling beast it once was. You sit close to the hearth, the flickering light playing across the faces of the villagers. They are thinner now, their cheeks hollow, their eyes tired. But there is something else in those eyes, something stronger. Survival. Old Tomas is there, leaning on his crooked cane, his voice thin but filled with life. I tell you, he begins, his words slow and steady, I thought I'd seen the worst of winters. I was wrong. That one, it was a beast. Around the fire others nod, leaning in closer. Helena is beside you, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. I remember the faces in the frost. She whispers, I thought I was losing my mind. But they were there. Weren't they? The villagers glance at each other, and a strange silence falls over the group. You notice the tension in the air, the mix of disbelief and fear. Some nod quietly. Others look away. I remember the darkness, says Marta's brother, his voice a low rumble. A darkness that seemed to breathe, to creep into every corner. And the silence when the wind stopped. I thought it was over. Old Tomas chuckles, a dry, raspy laugh. Well, it nearly was, lad. But we pulled through, didn't we? We always do, but even as the laughter spreads, you see it the shadow in their eyes. They may be laughing now, but the memory of that. Winter is like a scar, deep and unhealed. The stories continue, tales of stolen food, of bitter arguments, of the final feast where everyone pretended to be happy. But beneath the laughter, there is something darker, a quiet fear, a memory that refuses to fade, and as you listen, you wonder, will these stories become just stories? Or will they haunt the village forever? 2. The healer's warning gafter. The stories. The old healer, a bent, silver-haired woman named Elena, rises slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she leans on her staff. Her voice is a quiet, steady whisper, but the villagers fall silent when she speaks. You all laugh. Now, thinking it is over, she begins, her dark eyes sharp and clear. But winter is not just a season. It is a test. And it will come again. A cold hush falls over the room. Even the fire seems to dim slightly. Your stores were too low, she continues. You trusted too much in a mild autumn. You failed to gather enough, to prepare enough. And you paid the price, but we survived. Someone calls out, a hint of defiance in their voice. Yes. Some of you survived, Elena replies, her voice sharp as a knife. But not all. Remember those who did not. Remember the empty huts. Remember the screams in the night. Helena's fingers grip your sleeve, her eyes fixed on the healer. You must learn, Elena continues. Next year, you'll gather more. You'll dry your meat properly. Store your grains with care. You will not waste, and you will not let suspicion turn you against each other. Her gaze sweeps the room, fierce and unwavering. Or next time, this village will be nothing but snow-covered graves. Her words are a cold, cruel truth, but they sink in. The villagers nod slowly, some wiping tears from their eyes. Helena leans closer to you, her voice a whisper. We will be ready. Won't we? You nod, but in your heart you wonder. Can you ever truly be ready for a winter like that? 3. Ghosts of the frozen ninth spring has brought warmth, but at dusk, when the shadows stretch across the village, there are whispers of ghosts. Some say they see them, faint shapes wandering the snowy fields just beyond the village. Pale, hollow-eyed figures drifting through the mist, their faces twisted with sorrow. They are the lost ones, whispers young Jacob, his eyes wide with fear. The ones who never made it. Helena shivers beside you, pulling her cloak tighter. They say Marta walks with them. She whispers, her voice trembling. Her and the child she left behind. You want to tell her it's just a story, just the village's way of dealing with the grief, with the terrible memories. But you remember the faces in the frost, the way they seemed to watch you, twisted and ghostly, one night as you walk. With Helena along the edge of the village, you see something, a pale figure standing in the mist, just beyond the trees. Helena gasps, clutching your arm. But when you look again, it's gone. Just mist swirling in the fading light. But the stories continue. Some say they hear whispers on the wind. Others swear they've seen dark figures standing by the empty huts, staring, waiting. Ghosts don't stay where they are not remembered. Old Thomas says one night by the fire, if they are here, it's because we won't let them go. But how can you let go of a winter like that? How can you forget the faces, the screams, the silence? Do you even want to? 4. A scarred Springthy village is alive again. Children play in the fields, chasing each other through the tall, green grass. The trees are heavy with blossoms, their sweet scent filling the air. Birds sing, and the sun is warm, but the village is not the same. Some doors remain closed, their owners lost to the winter's cruel grip. Some fields are left untended, their caretakers gone. And even those who laugh and sing carry shadows in their eyes. Helena smiles more now, her cheeks gaining a touch of color. She spends her days in the garden, planting herbs and wildflowers. But at night, she still wakes with a start, her breath quick, her eyes searching the darkness. You spend your days working, clearing fields, mending fences, fixing the broken roof of your hut. The village is rebuilding. Life is returning. But the scars remain. One day, you see a group of children playing by the edge of the woods. They laugh, running after a small, chirping bird. But when the wind shifts, when the shadows stretch, they grow quiet, staring into the misty forest. For just a moment, the laughter fades. Old Thomas is there, sitting on a stump, his eyes half closed. He watches the children, a faint smile on his wrinkled face. But even he seems quieter now, his voice softer, his laughter weaker. We survived. Helena whispers one evening, her hand in yours. But we will always remember, won't we? You nod, staring at the darkening sky. The village is green again, the air warm, the birds cheerful. But the shadows of the winter are still there, clinging to the edges of your mind. Memories do not melt with the snow. The scars of the winter are written in the village's fields, in its walls, in the quiet, haunted eyes of its people. But you are alive. Helena is beside you. The fields are green. The sky is clear. And maybe, just maybe, there is hope, or perhaps, in a village that remembers so well, hope is just another story. Chapter 11. The darkest hour. You wake to a familiar, cruel sound, the wind. It howls against your window, a bitter, screaming beast that never seems to tire. You sit up, your breath misting in the cold air of your hut, your fingers numb even. Beneath the blankets, for a moment, you think it must be a dream. Spring was here. You saw the green shoots. You heard the birds. Didn't you? But when you step outside, you see it, the world is white again. Thick snow coats the ground, the weak green blades buried beneath a heavy, merciless blanket. The trees are wrapped in frost, their branches twisted and creaking in the wind. The pale sun is gone, hidden behind a thick wall of gray clouds. It's as if the winter has come back angry, hungry, refusing to let go. The villagers gather in the square, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. Old Tomas stands in the center, leaning on his cane, his wrinkled face filled with worry. It was supposed to be over, someone whispers. Spring was here, but winter never truly ends, does it? Tomas mutters, his voice a dry, cracking whisper. You see Helena, her cheeks red from the biting wind, her hands shaking as she pulls her thin cloak tighter. This can't be happening, she whispers, her voice trembling. It can't, but it is. The brief taste of spring was nothing but a cruel promise. The cold has returned, fiercer than before. The wind screams like a furious beast, rattling the shutters of your hut, slipping through every crack to claw at your skin. You pile the last of your firewood into the hearth, but it burns too quickly, the flames shrinking with every hour. The light that once gave you hope now seems weak and sickly, a dying star in a world of darkness. Outside, the village is swallowed by the storm. You can barely see the huts through the thick, swirling snow. And somewhere, out there in the freezing white void, you hear it, a faint, distant sound, crying. Or maybe screaming, too. The wailing wind returns. The wind is alive. It howls and shrieks, a terrible, endless wail that presses against your ears, your chest, your mind. It slips through the cracks in your walls, wrapping around you like cold, clawed fingers dot a T. Night, it's even worse. The darkness is thick, suffocating, pressing against your tiny window. And the wind, it whispers. It speaks in a voice you can't understand, a voice that rises and falls, sometimes a scream, sometimes a soft, cold whisper. Helena stays close to you, her eyes wide with fear. She barely speaks now, her hands gripping your sleeve whenever the wind rises. Do you hear it? She whispers one night, her voice so quiet you can barely hear her. Do you hear them? Calling? You try to comfort her, telling her it's just the wind, just the storm. But you're not sure anymore. The darkness outside feels thick, heavy, almost alive. And in the village, fear spreads like a sickness. Old Tomas tells stories again, but they're not like his usual tales. This wind is cursed, he mutters, his eyes dark. I've seen winters like this before, when the dead walk, when the cold brings more than just snow. The villagers whisper of ghosts, of shadows moving in the storm. Some say they see faces in the snow, twisted and screaming. Others speak of dark figures standing by the frozen river, watching, waiting. Helena cries at night, her whispers filling the darkness. They're coming for us. They won't let us go, and as the wind screams, as the darkness wraps around your tiny, flickering fire, you wonder, is she right? 3. The silent exodusn't everyone is willing to wait for the darkness to claim them. Some decide to leave. You hear the whispers first, a group of families planning to escape. They talk in hushed voices, packing what little food they have, gathering their children, their tools. They speak of the forests beyond the village, of the mountain pass that might be clear. It's better than dying here, a man mutters, his voice bitter. Better than waiting for the cold to swallow us. You see them one morning, wrapped in thick cloaks, their faces pale but determined. They don't say goodbye. They don't look back. They just walk, their figures swallowed by the swirling snow, their shadows fading into the mist. Helena watches them go, her eyes filled with fear. They won't make it, she whispers, clutching your arm. They'll freeze. Or something else will get them. You want to tell her she's wrong. You want to believe that they'll find safety, that they'll reach another village, another home. But the truth is, you don't know. No one does. Days pass, and the snow falls heavier. No one speaks of the ones who left. No one dares ask if they survived. But you see it in their eyes, that quiet, desperate question. Did they escape? Or are they just another story now, another whisper lost in the storm? Helena begins to talk about leaving too. Maybe we should go, she whispers one night. Maybe there's something better beyond the forest. But you look at the storm, at the thick, churning snow, at the darkness that seems to watch you from the trees, and you shake your head. Leaving means facing the unknown. But staying means facing the darkness you know all too well. So, which is worse. For the empty homestead village is not the same. Each day, more doors stay closed, more windows dark and silent. The snow piles against the huts, covering the steps, burying the tiny gardens that once promised spring. You walk through the village square, your feet sinking into the thick snow. Silence surrounds you, a heavy, terrible silence broken only by the endless wail of the wind. You see empty huts, their windows frosted over, pale faces staring from within. Old Tomas' door swings gently in the wind, but there is no light, no smoke from the chimney. His laughter, once so loud, so warm, is gone. Helena takes your hand, her fingers cold, her grip tight. They're all leaving, she whispers. Or they're just disappearing, and it's true. Every day, the village feels smaller, quieter. Some families leave, vanishing into the storm. Others simply stop. Their fires burn out, their doors stay shut. You hear nothing but the wind. You try to keep your own fire burning, but the wood pile is shrinking. The light seems weaker, the cold stronger. Helena barely eats, her face pale, her eyes dull. She sleeps fitfully, her dreams filled with whispers, with shadows. One night, you look outside, and you see it an empty hut, its window cracked. A thin, pale shape standing just inside. Watching, you turn away, but the image stays with you. The village is becoming a graveyard, a place of silent ghosts, of empty homes. How long before your own hut is just another dark, silent shell? How? Long before the cold claims you too. Chapter 12, The End of Winter. It starts with a drip. Just one. A tiny, silent drop of water that slides down the edge of your window. Then another. And another, the gray sky, so thick and suffocating for so long, begins to crack. Pale sunlight breaks through, weak at first, but growing stronger. The wind, that terrible, wailing wind, finally grows quiet. In its place is something new, something gentle, warmth. You step outside, and the snow beneath your feet is soft, slushy, no longer the thick, frozen blanket it once was. It melts away slowly, revealing patches of dark, muddy earth. The river, which had been frozen solid for months, begins to move again. Tiny cracks form in the ice, spreading, splitting, until, with a soft, wet sigh, it breaks apart. Everywhere you look, there is movement. Water trickles down the streets, carrying away the last bits of ice. The trees, twisted and bare for so long, begin to sprout tiny buds, pale green against the dark, wet branches. Birds, real birds, not just whispers of ghosts, return. Their songs filling the air, the villagers step outside, blinking in the pale sunlight. Faces that had been pale and thin now turn toward the sky, eyes wide with disbelief. Old Tomas hobbles out of his hut, his wrinkled face breaking into a wide, toothless grin. "It's over," he whispers, tears in his eyes. "It's finally over." Helena is beside you, her cheeks gaining a touch of color, her eyes bright with something you haven't seen in months' joy. "We made it," she whispers, clutching your arm. "We survived, but it is not a sudden miracle. The snow doesn't vanish overnight. The cold doesn't leave all at once. It is slow, steady, a gentle war between warmth and ice. Each day, the snow retreats a little more. Each night, the air is just a bit less sharp, and with each step, the village breathes again. Fires burn brighter, laughter returns. But beneath the joy, there is something else. A shadow. A memory, for even as the earth awakens, you know. The winter is never truly gone. It sleeps, waiting, just beyond the horizon, too. Survivors reunited. Not everyone survived. Some huts remain dark, their doors shut, their windows cold and silent. But not all who disappeared are gone. One bright morning, you hear a shout. At the edge of the village, dark shapes appear, moving slowly through the thinning snow. Figures, wrapped in thick, tattered cloaks, faces pale but alive. The villagers run to meet them, voices calling out in joy and disbelief. You see them, the ones who left, who chose to face the wild instead of the endless cold. They look different, thinner, their cheeks hollow, their eyes tired. But they are alive. Helena rushes forward, embracing an old friend who had left with her family. Tears stream down her face, her laughter bright and wild. "You made it," she cries, holding her friend close. "You made it." The returning villagers tell their stories of dark forests, of snow-covered paths, of bitter cold winds that seemed to follow them everywhere. Some lost everything. Some barely survived. But they came back, a man named Jacob, who had left. With his wife and son, speaks of a hidden valley where they found a tiny, abandoned hut. They lived there, surviving on melted snow and dried roots. His voice shakes as he speaks, but his eyes are filled with quiet pride. "We never gave up." He whispers, "Those who stayed tell their own stories of nights spent huddled by weak fires, of whispered fears, of faces in the frost. They speak of the final, desperate feast, of old Tomas stories, of the darkness that seemed alive, and as the stories are shared, laughter returns. Tears are shed, but there is a warmth now, a strength that wasn't there before. The village is whole again, scarred, yes, but alive. But even in the joy, you see it a shadow in every eye, a shiver in every voice. The memory of the winter is not easily forgotten. 3. Seeds of hope with spring comes work. The fields, so long buried beneath the snow, are cleared, the dead, twisted plants pulled away. The earth is dark, wet, and cold, but it is alive. Tiny green. Shoots appear, reaching for the sun. You work with the others, turning the soil, planting seeds. Wheat, barley, beans, the simplest of crops, but precious now, a promise of life. Helena works beside you, her hands thin but strong, her face bright with hope. We'll have a good harvest, she says, wiping the sweat from her brow. We must. We deserve it. The village square is busy again. The laughter, the shouts, the arguments, they are signs of life. Families trade seeds, share tools, repair their huts. The dark days of winter seem like a distant memory, almost like a bad dream, but the shadow is still there. When the wind rises, even the faintest breeze, you see faces turn toward the sky, eyes filled with quiet fear. At night, the village is silent, the doors shut tight, the fires burning high. Old Tomas plants his own tiny garden, his crooked cane leaning against his door. He smiles as he works, but his hands shake, his eyes often drifting toward the forest. It won't be like last time, he mutters. It can't be. You and Helena plant herbs by your hut, mint, thyme, a few wildflowers. Tiny things, but to you they are a promise. A promise that life goes on, but as you pat the dark earth, as you water the tiny seeds, you wonder, will this harvest be enough? Will it truly wash away the memory of the winter? Or is that shadow forever a part of you now? 4. The memory of. Frost summer arrives with its warm, golden light. The fields turn green, the trees burst into bloom, and the village is alive again. Children run through the fields, chasing butterflies. Birds sing in the trees. The river is clear and cold, its waters sparkling in the sunlight, but even in the warmth, the shadow of winter lingers. Helena laughs as she picks wildflowers, her cheeks flushed with color, her voice light and cheerful. But at night, she still wakes suddenly, her dreams haunted by whispers, by cold, twisted faces staring through the frost. Old Tomas tells stories in the square, his voice strong, his laughter bright. But when he thinks no one is watching, his smile fades. He stares at the sky, his eyes dark, his hand resting on his crooked cane. The empty huts, those who did not survive, still stand, their doors shut, their windows dark. No one speaks of them, but everyone remembers. Sometimes on quiet evenings, you hear it, a faint, distant howl, a whisper of wind. It is just the breeze, just the forest sighing in the summer air. But to you, it sounds like something else, a warning. But the village is alive. The fields are green. The fires burn bright. You and Helena work together, laughing, dreaming, hoping, and yet, you know, deep down, you all know. The winter is gone, but it is not forgotten. It is a shadow, a scar that will never truly fade. You survived. The village survived. But the memory of the frost will always be there, a cold whisper in the warm summer air, a shadow at the edge of every dream. Will you ever truly forget? Or will the winter always wait just beyond the horizon?